Okay, so I think we can start. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our showroom, and thank you for being here this evening. For us, it's very nice to have just relocated here to one of the design districts of the city, and we hope that this is just the first events of a series. For those who don't know me, my name is Ilaria. I'm one of the A&D representative for PBA. And tonight I'm going to be the moderator. So I'm going to introduce our speakers. So we have here Kando Murphy. She's from HOK, a resource material specialist. We have our own Xiomara. She's an architect working as A&D representative at PBA. We have Raphael Willem from Allsteel and is the architectural and design manager. And we have Melissa Dalal from interior designer and project manager from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. So without further ado, let me start with the first question. So Melissa, this is for you. As an interior designer specializing in innovative, equitable, and sustainable design within a large healthcare group, which are the main strategies that you use to ensure that your design promotes inclusivity, sustainability, and also health and well-being?
So that when I saw that question, you sent it to me earlier, it seemed like it was like a giant question. Obviously, we're a big healthcare system. We have 30 locations in New York, New Jersey, Long Island, and Westchester. We're part of, we have an in-house design team, which is unusual for a healthcare system. We have 10 people in-house doing smaller projects, but we work with larger architecture firms. So when we think about the topics that you just mentioned, sustainability, inclusivity, human-centered design, we kind of have to take a step back and tell a story both internally and to our consultants via different guides that we create. So what I'm showing here, we have an environmental brand guide that is sort of the starting point to tell the story about how we want to touch upon these things within the work that we do. Then we also have our space design guide that shows different space types, both in public spaces and clinical spaces and in staff spaces. So what I kind of wanted to communicate with these slides is that we sort of set the ground, sort of do the groundwork first before we start a project and make sure that these things are happening, and then check in with these principles throughout a project to make sure we're sort of delivering on them. So when we say environments that proactively contribute, we want to make sure that not only are our spaces functional and beautiful, and but that they're also helping patients rehabilitate. And an example of that is when patients are, say, on an inpatient ward at our hospital and they have to take some steps every day and they're walking around, we make sure that journey, that they can measure, okay, today that I walked this far, and maybe there's some artwork on the wall that the nurses will sort of talk to them about, and there's numbers on the wall. So just that idea that the space itself is part of your journey and your rehabilitation. Then inclusive sense of belonging, I would say, it's pretty pervasive, but it comes from everything from giving people options. So options in seating, options in if they're coming alone to our hospital, if they're coming with families, just how that they can move to different spaces. So that's one of them. Progress is sacred. People like to think about where they are in their journey and know that information. So to be able to track that via design is important too, and future facing and flexible is really sustainability, building with modular construction, so that things are flexible. And then here's just a little bit about the brand personality too, that touches on all of that too. So making sure our spaces sort of adhere to all of these different things. Again, like having a checklist. So when we're working on projects, we're making sure we're sort of hitting all of these items. And then here were just some examples of sort of signature elements that touch on these. So our reception desks are at the far left there, and we call them beehives. And the idea was to create something that really didn't have like a barrier between you and the person working there. So it's about accessibility, it's warm, it's friendly, approachable. So that's the reception area. Here, this middle area is what we call a menagerie table, and they're drawers and glass top openings where you can see all sorts of games and toys and stationery and books. So it's sort of an activity table to kind of create these moments of positive distraction for our patients. Then all our seating areas have what we call like a nourishment station, a bodega. So just something friendly where people can get a snack throughout our spaces. So these are things we implement in every single one of our spaces. And then within clinical, I just showed some examples of some brand standards, just the way we think about efficiency of care within our exam rooms, that we're really trying to figure out the best way that the clinicians can kind of navigate the space, that the family members have a nice space to sit, that the patient has the best sight lines to things. So this has been very well honed in terms of everyone's experience in the space. This middle one is what we call our infusion mobility zone. So this is another sort of example of a space that is part of the healing process. So patients who are getting chemotherapy are encouraged to come outside of their treatment rooms and actually walk around, because it's healthier for them to be walking while they're doing their treatments. And so we make that space really welcoming and inviting for them to either socialize or be with their families, or just have a seat, or just move around and see different areas. And then this was a sort of sustainable example where we just built our first operating room platform with entirely modular construction. So this is a pre-op, post-op area, and then an operating room, a series of operating rooms. So this again was for infection control, sustainability, for patient experience, for all of these staff experience, just the way staff can move through the space. It's highly efficient. And then for staff spaces, again, we have these space types that we repeat over and over again, but it's important for us to give staff respite throughout the day. They can go into a staff lounge that we purposely make very different than the rest of the spaces that they're working in, just they feel like they have a break. We have these collaboration rooms, so talking about innovation and fostering innovation and how can we do that. And then also giving people, our staff, choice as well, as like we do with patients, different work areas. People have different ways that they like to work, so giving them sort of choice in that sense.
Thank you. It's very fascinating. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot we can keep it interactive. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to do so. But we will also leave some time for Q&A at the end.
So I love that modular instructions for the post-op and pre-op, whatever it's called. How did you come up with the kit of parts to make that a thing?
So I guess we looked at a couple of different manufacturers as we were doing it, and that area was built with Falk Built, who we built things with before. And I think it was about, seeing the kit of parts, seeing the way all the medical kind of gases and electrical and all of that sort of went in their wall systems, and just made us not have to do a lot of construction. There wasn't construction debris. The way things are shipped to the site are, they're packed in very small packages. Everything's like more efficient. So you save a lot in terms of like what's going back into the environment, in terms of cleanability too. Like it's super sort of everything's wipeable. It's not like drywall. In terms of speed of construction, it's really like you're snapping these things together, and then all the different trades are coming on site and plugging their stuff in, and it's very efficient.
I think it's brilliant because we deal with so many architectural and design firms who really want to put their stamp on a space, as you know. And so everything is millworked and everything is one use only. And the idea that you're creating something that's actually reusable long term, is so forward thinking. I'm so wow, that's pretty brilliant.
And yeah. I also wanted to hear from you, from the producer point of view. Yeah, what are your strategies to ensure that environments are inclusive when you are designing spaces?
So when I got this question, I thought to myself, what is a producer? And then I realized, oh, it's me as the manufacturer. So P.S. and I hate my voice on recording. No, it's okay. So I was talking. My partner's in the audience. So hi, Colin. And I was listening to something that I had done. I'm sort of digressing. Something that I had done before, and I was listening to my voice, and I'm like, oh my god, I sound so. Ugh, I hate my voice. Right? It's very common. But this one here, he has an incredible speaking voice, and so I'm like, how do you do that? But anyway, and you too, girl. Good for you. So, from a manufacturing standpoint, an all steel standpoint, when we think of inclusive design, we really want to think about how do we think about the environment holistically. And so, how do we think about creating spaces that is usable, accessible, and where everyone feels like their voices are and their needs are being heard and met? We start there. I mean, more than anything, it's really important for us to give environments that address a wide variety of needs for individuals. And that can mean a lot of different things. And so when we think about space, we want to think about it holistically. But it also gives us an opportunity to reframe our thinking around what that means. And so one of the cool things is, when we think about the people and the space that we're supporting for the people, and all the different needs that we need to think about, it creates a space that's a lot more dynamic than I think we would normally give it credit for. And so seeing those differences as strengths is one of the ways that we first start thinking about inclusivity as it relates to space. But also thinking about it from a place of empathy and understanding the diversity of needs that go into that space. And so if you go into an inclusive design conversation with someone, you really want to say, I hear you. I'm going to try to create a space that really supports you in the many ways that you may or may not need to be supported. But we like to think of it, if you want to go to the next slide, through three buckets, three pillars that we think about as the basis of inclusive design. Keeping in mind there are many, but when we think about space, we look at it through these three buckets. We first want to look at it through this lens of physical diversity. I mean, we all come to work however we're coming to work, but there are opportunities to support the differently people with different abilities than we might have. So coming up with ways to make things feel more accessible that give us an opportunity to adjust postures, but also to think about things more ergonomically, gives us that path to supporting different physical diversity. And then we also look at it through the lens of neurodiversity. And we were just having this conversation about neurodiversity. HOK has just recently published their latest iteration of the neurodiversity conversation. But what's important with regard to space is looking at space from how people process sensory and cognitive processing needs. And so with that comes with thinking about things from a palette standpoint. Maybe can you create a more calming space? Can you create spaces that offer some form of psychological comfort, and that some place where you can feel like you can sort of disconnect from the hive? And I think that's really important when we're thinking about space from a neurodiverse standpoint. But also that there's a tactile component that can be really supportive too. And so, how do you blend all that together? Um, and then finally, that final pillar that we like to think about from a trauma informed design standpoint. And I think trauma informed is a really activating word, but trauma can be anything. And so when we think about the experiences that we might be experiencing before we walk into the office, good or bad, that could be a form of trauma. And so, how might we create a space that gives you psychological comfort, that really gives you a sense of, okay, I feel like I belong here. And so, with that, we want to ensure that the sight lines and wayfinding for exits are really accessible and visible, and that there is a sense of home really when you get into that space. And I say that simply because I go into the office and I walk in and I can sort of exhale. And I think those moments that people get that ability to just breathe and be in their own skin is important. And developing spaces is important when we think about that. And so the big net out of all of this is creating spaces that really are bionic, if you will, because they do more than just one thing. And I love this idea of creating spaces that are super powerful, and their superpower is to give you a sense of calm. And so when we think about that from all the different people that come into the space, being able to support those different personalities, those different abilities, and those different needs, it's kind of amazing. And we think about what that looks like in the real world applications. Think about the curb cutout, and the effect that has had on everyone. We designed this. We designed that for one purpose, and that was for a wheelchair access. But how many of us use that curb cutout, right? So think about it. Think about space through that lens, and how many things that might be applied for one specific one of these pillars, but we're all going to leverage them in the end. So whether it be ergonomically with height adjustable work surfaces that can go to certain heights, or whether it be anything for that matter, it's important for us to think about space not just through one universal lens, but from an inclusive lens that gives us something that is magical in the end.
Thank you. Thanks. From like another perspective, but still from manufacturer point of view, let's hear from Xiomara how inclusivity and also sustainability are core values in our company.
Our company, yes. So I would love to start by sharing a personal insight, because before start working at PBA, I didn't know much about door hardware. And even if I am an architect, to be honest, I was pretty sure that the levers and the pulls were like pre-packaged with the door. But don't tell to our boss. So when I got this change to join this team, the first thing that I did was to go to the website and to try to find out something more about PBA, to explore this company. And I still remember today that I was really shocked about how for PBA, door hardware means much more than just pulls and levers. It's embodied values. And today I can say, yes, we open doors, but at PBA we open just the right ones. So when it comes to sustainability, it's not only about using fancy eco-friendly material, but it's also about doing our best to cut down on waste, on energy use. So from in each step, from production till the installation of our pools. And when it comes to sustainability, well, for me, it's like magic happens because there are pulls and levers, but our team is always brainstorming with designers to find out with some cool solution that can help everyone to be able to use our products, pulls and levers, and also bathroom accessories. So it's more than just hardware or bathroom accessories. For this reason, also I love this company because at the end of the day, I feel that we are making a difference. No, we in some way we are improving this world from the sustainability point of view, but also from the inclusive one. So I don't know if I answered to your question.
Thanks. Canon, Xiomara mentioned sustainability and materials. So, from your experience, what are some promising materials that you have seen recently, or manufacturing techniques? And yeah, if you want to share them.
Oh, I have so many. I think first and foremost, talking, specifically about EcoNil that it was used in this product is really important because it represents a really specific thing in sustainability that we have to get behind, and that is reusing things that have been thrown away or figuring out how to divert things that are usable before they end up in the landfill. We're running out of stuff. Like, we need to be able to reclaim that stuff. There is no away anymore. And we're seeing more and more examples of this all of the time. And the story of EcoNil, which would be a whole panel discussion in itself, is really fascinating. The idea of reclaiming fishing nets and turning it back into viable product, because the fishing nets are pure nylon. There's no reason that can't be reclaimed and reused. So we're seeing more and more examples of that are maybe not as apparent, and something that we need to, as architects and designers, to really start to think critically about what in the buildings can be reused and how do we prevent that from going into the landfill. And that is a really difficult conversation that no one has a super good answer on right now. So be thinking out there, because there is a career, many careers in that available in the future. So we're really starting to see it in specifically carpet tile and different types of plastics. Of course, metals have been kind of the obvious one. They're so easy to recycle. But we need to think about other things too that are going in. And there's really fascinating stuff that's coming out. In fact, just at ICFF, very exciting, is just about to release, made in upstate New York, is a MDF type product that is made with reclaimed cannabis stalks from the burgeoning cannabis industry here in New York State. And that is not the only example of what I would consider post-industrial agricultural waste that is being used. Unfortunately, there was a company in California that came to market by using the excess of the rice crop to make an MDF type product. And they unfortunately had some problems, and they opened 3 months before COVID lockdown, and they have gone under, but the technology is there to be able to use these things. And we're seeing a lot of them coming out of specifically Northern Europe. There's a company that I'm working with called Stone Cycling that is using post-industrial corn waste to create a wall panel product that's similar to a wall protection. It could eventually replace an FRP. And anyone out there that works in architecture and design probably knows that FRP is our most problem product category, with no better alternatives, heavy with chemicals. So we're seeing more and more of those kinds of things come out. And think about how interesting that is for a product designer or a manufacturer, because you suddenly have raw material that's practically free because somebody's throwing that away, and there's kind of nowhere to put it. And in fact, not only is it free, but they might actually pay you because they would often have to pay to dump it. So the supply chains can be really, figured out with that. The other thing that's super interesting is grown materials. So mycelium is on everybody's best topic. Mycelium is finally, after about 7 years, and I know they've been doing research on it way before that, but they've been talking about it um, in the A&D world as a plausible thing, probably for about 7 years now, has like come to market. Like it really is available. And the first company actually was just showing at ICFF to do mycelium upholstery. So it's been available in like wearable textiles or like handbag, kind of this mycelium leather, but now it's like been engineered enough so it can be upholstery, which is fabulous. And then there's also other ways to grow it for structures. That same company, Stone Cycling, out of Belgium, that does the Cornwall, is working on a concrete with coral properties. Now, I went to art school and I have learned a lot of science working in sustainability, but I still don't understand how they're growing concrete block, but they are. And so it's essentially has the properties of coral, and it's super light and it's like extremely strong. So that's also very important. But really, where a lot of the sustainability in product design, I think that's happening like right now as we speak and can be continuing to happen, is also representative in this product from PBA, is design for disassembly and simplification of components and removals of adhesives. And this is extremely important as we think about sustainability and reclaiming that stuff. Like, not everything can be a solid aluminum door pull, right? We have to have soft things. We need to have the ability to have different textures and colors in our life. We can't just live in white rooms, unlike some influencers might make you believe. And also Pinterest, which don't even get me started. But but we need to have components and things, but we also need to be able to take them apart. And some of the worst offenders in sustainability when it comes to human health is adhesives, anything kind of liquid applied. But then also what happens is as soon as you adhere something together, you can't take it apart. There's very few adhesives that can be taken apart at all. And so there's been really interesting designs. There's starting to be even task chairs. Now, the complication of a task chair in the sustainability world is actually kind of peak of sustainability problem solving, It's like some of the worst. So this idea that can we simplify components? Can we remove adhesives? Can we identify the things in a product that we're putting together that is going to be the thing that breaks? And can we make that replaceable easily? And so we kind of have to start, like, almost, if you're a product designer or if you're an interior designer or an architect in this audience, I'm sure you can picture it. Like, if you're thinking about your little model on your computer, like, can you explode it in your mind? And how many pieces are there? And does it need that many pieces? Where can you start to do that? So we kind of have to think in that way, and it can be a little complicated, and I'm going to talk about that in my later question. So yes.
That was, you were leading to that question. So I wanted to know how you as product designer can contribute to producing sustainable products. So using sustainable and clean materials. So from the designer perspective and not from the manufacturer one.
Yeah.
How can you influence?
You can influence it so much, and sometimes you don't even have to tell anyone. That's how I got into sustainability. I started my career. I broke my teeth in sustainability in the retail design world, and those people don't care about sustainability. They care about how much product they can move. So you can just sneak it in, like do the research and sneak it in. But essentially, just really understand. I think if you're a product designer, the nice thing about having an industrial design education is you get a kind of a scientific basis of materiality, and you should expand your knowledge upon that to understand what components cause a problem, where you can find those materials that are recyclable, those like raw materials that are, out of that post-industrial waste or what have you. Um, and if you're, an interior designer or an architect in the audience, understanding and then also I should say with the product designers is to make sure that you're providing that information to whoever's purchasing the product through transparency in whatever that is. It doesn't have to be a $40,000 certification. Just what can you share about it is really helpful to us. And then as interior designers or architects, which are kind of end users in this case, as understanding what are the problem items in that particular product category, and then understanding how to look for that transparency within that. And I know that sounds like a ton of work and like a education to give yourself, but also you don't have to do it all at once. So like start working on like little steps, and it can really start to build on your education. And that's how I learned what I know now. It's not that I went to some crazy grad school, because no one teaches this as a degree yet. It is years and years of just like small steps. And that's the thing with product design, it can be that way too.
Yeah.
Thanks. Let's go back to you, Rafael. Can you? Yeah. Sure.
I guess I'm wondering, with your clients and adopting new materials, I could imagine that's probably scary for some people. And I'm just wondering like how that plays out often when you're suggesting a mycelium wall or something. Like what are people kind of saying to you?
They're terrified, all of them. But I'll talk about that a little bit in my second part question about working with clients. But it's you need to hold their hands a little bit, and you're going to have some clients that are more reluctant than others. But often small doses to start with, especially if we have legacy clients. Like if we had a client like you, we would kind of do tests, we would roll things out, we would do a lot of product testing to make sure it's going to stand up to like your cleaning agents, things like that. Or I will often use materials I'm not really sure about their durability 100%, in places that they don't have as much risk. So it's kind of this like playing game. It's a long haul. It's the long game. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to hear from you if you have some case studies or projects you've been involved with, where you successfully foster collaboration between, again, producers and designers.
Absolutely. So, as luck would have it, yeah, I do. So, one of the cool things about All Steel is that we really love to partner with those forward-thinking clients and influencers that push our envelope to make us think broader and more innovative. And so we had the pleasure of working with an organization that's based in Muscatine, Iowa, where we're based, Muscatine, Iowa, the Stanley Center. And they were looking to reimagine their headquarters. And so they hired a design firm, Newman Munson Architects, that challenged them to think about their space through the Living Building Challenge. Which is really impressive, because one of the cool things about that is the building has to be self-sufficient. So it has this well story, this sustainability story, this whole story that's not only good for the individuals that are working and existing in this space, but it's also great for the communities, for the community. We partnered with this architectural firm. We partnered with the client to help them create this space that would meet these stringent LBC, Living Building Challenge, requirements. But in doing that, that pushed us in a direction that we weren't thinking about going deeper than we already are. Sustainability has always been part of the All Steel ethos, but now we're taking it even a step further. And so as we were thinking about how we could support this space, we were asking them what really mattered to you with regard to the work that you want us to do. And so they use our solutions for their sustainability needs as well. but more importantly for them was our architectural solutions. And they wanted to create spaces that had this wonderful, equitable conversation. Yay! Oh, they wanted to create spaces that everyone had the same size office. And so talk about equity. They wanted to remove all the hierarchy that's in typical office spaces. They wanted everyone to have the same sort of thing. And so they leveraged one of our architectural solutions, our Beyond product, that has an incredible sustainability story. And I love what you said about no adhesives. And so one of the things that is the beauty about that architectural product for us is that it's highly reconfigurable. So literally, it gave them this conversation about future proofing their spaces, so that those offices that they built by 5x7 size, whatever the size was, can be reconfigured tomorrow, because as we know, the way that we're working today might not be how we're working tomorrow, and we might need to change that space into something else. So with this wall product, they're able to rejudge on the fly, if you will. And so that to me was really one of the key things that was so exciting about working with the Stanley Center, as well as um, the architectural firm. But I think more than anything, too, it really amplified the sustainability and inclusivity conversation, because they kind of have to go together. Because if one doesn't happen, then we don't care about the other thing. And that's not really a good thing. And so I think there's such a dynamic force when you think about them together. The synergy of in sustainability and inclusive design is something that makes space more appetizing for those that are hungry for more.
Thanks. And again, from the designer point of view, can you describe the project where you collaborated closely with different stakeholders to integrate sustainable material into the design process? And what challenges did you encounter and how did you solve them?
I just want to mention this is every project that I work on that this happens. Every project. So I'm just going to kind of walk through projects, but really the first thing, if we have a client that comes to us, and we frequently do, HOK is very well known for their sustainable initiatives broadly. I mean, between neurodiversity to accessibility to our material pledges. And then we do tons and tons of certified spaces as well. But really, if we have a client that doesn't come to us and says, I want a LEED platinum building or I want a living building certified building, the conversation first is, what does sustainability mean to you? Because it means so many things to so many different people, and it can almost be a buzzword. It can be misunderstood. It's too broad. There are so many points to sustainability. Like, are we talking about energy efficiency, or are we talking about removing all endocrine disruptors from the space? Like, these are wildly different things and have wildly different concerns. But if we're looking at sustainability from a client's perspective, I need to know what that perspective is, kind of first and foremost. What do they care about? And then we can start to also have the conversation about if a client's like, well, I don't know, I just want to be sustainable, or I just want to make a CSR report, or I have to report, I have to report to the government. So I don't know. I just like do whatever. And that happens sometimes. But then we can start to work on, okay, what's really the priorities here? Or if they don't know and they just want to do better, which frequently happens, actually, that's one of the more frequent items. It's like, okay, what is your space doing? And that can be so different depending on the project type. Are we designing a hotel? Are we designing a cancer center? Are we designing a retail store? These have wildly different concerns when it comes to sustainability. And they need to be addressed differently, because I'm not going to care as much about some things in a hotel as I am in a cancer treatment center. And then we also have to look at the product's ability to perform in those spaces as well as we're designing for sustainability. So kind of first and foremost is applicability and durability. Is that material right for that space? Is that product right for that space? Because it can be the most sustainable material in the world, but I can't put cork flooring in a surgery center, because that's not sustainable. Because first of all, it's going to harbor bacteria. It's not going to, if we're hurting people, that's not sustainable. If it's not durable enough for the project use type, or if we have to throw it away in 6 months, that's not sustainable, even if it is the most sustainable thing in the world. So we kind of have to take all of these considerations in mind. Um, and we kind of work, when it comes to specifically materiality and products, through, right now, the common materials framework is really the way that the industry has decided that we are going to start measuring from a material perspective. And this is getting adopted really broadly through the A&D world right now. And it's the idea of that there's these like 5 aspects of sustainability, some of the things that we really know and some things that we kind of don't know and we're just starting on. And that one of those kind of unknowns right now is the social health and equity portion, which is where neurodiversity comes in, accessibility. And we're talking about the potential for supply chain transparency. Like, do we have any issues downstream on the supply chain of like potential forced labor or pollution of the environment? That is like really deep, deep, deep down there. And those are the things that are harder to measure. Some of the things that are easier to measure are chemicals of concern. Do we have any known carcinogens or endocrine disruptors in these products? Can we avoid them by measuring, by using transparency documentation? We know a lot how to measure climate health right now. That's like the big topic right now. Everybody's talking about it. Carbon, embodied carbon, the carbon countdown. We have too much carbon in the atmosphere. We need to reclaim that. We need to get it out to stop this progression of heat in our world, and kind of like reset the clock in that way. And so those can be wildly different based on the space, based on the client, based on the project use type. Even the location of the building can sometimes inform these things, or how often can we open the window? That could inform these things as well of what we're doing. So there's not really an easy answer, but there's this almost kind of back and forth play about it for really understanding. And then of course, everybody's got a budget. And some materials and products, specifying them sustainability represents a cost add, and some don't. Like, you can often frequently specify a hardware that's more sustainable only because you have the transparency for, like, it doesn't really cost more. But some things are a lot more expensive. If we're looking at, say, removing all PVC from a flooring product that needs to be highly cleanable and stand up to a lot of very, very deep chemicals, that becomes more expensive. But it's kind of like, is it worth it? And these things are starting to level out more and more as the consumer demand comes. And that's really something that I work on teaching, especially HOK. We have the Sustainable Materials Initiative, where we encourage designers to measure the transparency of their projects, or their products that they're specifying in their projects. And we're not measuring them because we're like necessarily requiring the designers to come to this level of sustainability that's like almost to be top or to be the best or to win. We're really measuring them as a way to take a baseline of data in the industry, like we at HOK like to do, especially like neurodiversity. We do a lot of this kind of thought leadership, but also we see it as a way to be advocates, because the manufacturers make what we ask for. I know you know this. Right? And so if we are all, as a firm, the 650 interior designers, I don't even know how many architects work at HOK. If all of those 650 interior designers around the world are asking the manufacturers the same things, we see considerable market change. And then if we have big clients that we're helping to educate on that too, that's even more considerable market change, because they're the ones that actually have the money. So it's this kind of like dance around finding, what's going to work in the space. Can we afford it? What's going to work in the client's budget, kind of what it is. And so I use this when I do presentations, this example all the time. Okay, you're at a concert and you need a t-shirt from that concert, and there's 2 t-shirts hanging up there and they look to be almost exactly the same. It's like nearly the same logo, but one is $25 and one is $35. Like, which t-shirt do you choose based on this information? Yeah. Did you look at the tag though? That information is right there. You just have to open it up and ask. One's 100% polyester and one's 100% cotton. We should be picking the cotton one, regardless of the price. Sometimes the price is, sometimes the price it's not worth it in the end if it's gonna go to the landfill and live forever. So understanding those things, and like the challenges within that again is the dance. Things get VE'd. It totally happens. So do we prioritize when I'm teaching young designers about sustainability and they are wildly overwhelmed because they've just come into the workforce, they've just got out of college, they just were used to making pretty pictures, they don't really talk about this stuff, they have like all these deadlines, and all of a sudden they're like filling out spreadsheets that they never even heard of in their life, and they're like, I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, well, just work on one thing. Like, work on one thing that's like a big part of the space. You don't have ACT in here, but I often recommend ACT because it's almost everywhere. Or just work on the flooring, and then you can kind of build that. I do the same thing with the clients. I kind of like feed them little tidbits about sustainability to help them decide on that. And then you have, some people that don't believe or don't care, and that's a whole different thing. I come at it in a different way there. Sometimes I just don't even say sustainability. I tell them, this material is right for this project because of the durability, because of the lead time, because of the price point. And then I'll say, kind of at the end, I'll say, oh, and this has no chemicals of concern and it has an extremely low embodied footprint. And they're like, oh, that's a bonus. If you say it first, sometimes they're like, oh, it's more expensive. But that's how you can kind of sneak it in, especially if it's not really more expensive. If it's going to be twice as much, as they'll notice. But if it's like 5 cents more a square foot, they're not going to notice. They're not going to notice at all. Yeah. So it's like it's kind of education for everyone. Do we have a question?
Can I ask questions?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, so I'm wondering if actually any of you have to change the language that you use depending who the client is or what red or blue state you're in.
Every day.
Oh, interesting. Can you tell me how it changes?
Yeah. Absolutely. I do. You got to read the room. I think I've learned how to do this. I bartended my way through college. So I think that I really learned how to read people, but you can kind of see the wall, especially like if I walk into a conference room and I'm introduced as like, oh, this is our firm-wide materials specialist, and she's also a deep green sustainability specialist. Sometimes you just see people like tense up. But like that's also researching your client and the values, and kind of trying to get people from different ways. I was doing a lot of work in Texas and did not really no one there wanted to talk about chemicals of concern or embodied carbon, but they did really care about energy efficiency because it's hot. They're like very hot, and then also very, very cold and like very, very stormy and no nice days. So so you kind of learn how to dance around and get like to their thing. I think to be good at this, I think probably Melissa has some examples too.
Yeah, do you want to pull up this up?
You have a slide to help answer my question.
It's okay. I'll just click through. So yeah, this is oops. This was just a continuation of the project that I
No, I didn't do anything.
okay.
Let's go to the slide that you.
It's okay.
Which one is it?
No, it's that one, yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's that one.
Yeah, but no, I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, you're on. That's the right one. That's fine.
Okay. Sorry.
So as a client, that project, we had to sort of decide like what work
Keep going.
in terms of working with a modular system. Like why were we doing that? We were doing that because we wanted future flexibility, and we didn't know how cancer care is going to be in 5 years, 10 years. So obviously, we would need to.
I don't know, it's slow, I'm sorry. Then there's
If the battery in the computer's dying.
That's okay. So no, so I was going to say, so our main reasons for choosing this whole modular system to design an operating room suite was because of future flexibility, and then the second reason would have been for human health, and obviously, as a cancer hospital, like the manufacturing process, there's no way we want to put chemicals back into the environment that will cause cancer. And then for our patients, obviously, we want to be as mindful as of their health as possible. But I think I would say the flexibility and human health were the driving factors.
but
There's no tablet over here.
it's just technical issues. Yes, it's the same. Anyway, I don't know. Explain it now. Sorry. What do with that slide here?
It's interesting when you talk about the different regions that don't want to hear about good things, good things for the environment. I'm also part of the Equity Council for IDA, and we are charged with the organization started because we wanted to be more diverse architecture and design family, and in doing that, we work with firms to make sure they have a strategy on equity, diversity, and inclusion and justice Jedi work. So this committee started a couple years ago during height of the pandemic, George Floyd, and all the things that were happening. But we've seen it wane because people have decided that everything's fixed. And so it's interesting when you think about that from regionally, where there's less connection to doing what's doing what's right, to doing what's right for the building, but also doing what's right for the people that are in the building. So I think that's kind of interesting. Yeah. So I'm going to give this back to you.
Any question?
Yeah.
Hi, I have a question based on what Camden was saying a few points ago. I've been finding like a frustrating gap in trying to recycle materials even within the same industry because of lack of communication between, let's say, designers who choose materials for a space and then the people responsible for decommissioning that space, not knowing what to do with those materials. So as a producer or as a designer, what would be your recommendation for somebody on the operations side trying to better bridge the gap between designers who are selecting materials that have a take-back program or a manufacturer recycling program and getting that information communicated to the end user?
Yeah, a lot of people are working on this right now because it's very difficult, and because so if you think of we'll see the most traction with owner operators, definitely through this because they have control of the demo crew, and that is really where the main issue is that you need to have a contractor on board that has a demo crew that is able to separate, and that is the key here, because demo crews almost all of the time are just sent in to just with sledgehammers just to get it out. They don't separate things, they don't palletize things, and that's very difficult. So It has been done. There are case studies to do that, and we're starting to see it kind of taken in the spec process. So in the put into the spec book when a new space is designed, it can be kind of written in each spec section which products have a reclamation program. But then depending on how long has been, you kind of want to double check that, and that can be a little bit more complicated too, because companies come in and out of business and it happens. But really, it's the major manufacturers that can do those. There's a little bit of precedent on LEED V4, V4.1, and then the new V5 that's just about to launch. You can get some good template information from there on how to do that. Again, the percentage of success is not huge, but it's starting to get a little bit closer there. So you need to have a lot of control over that contractor, a lot. And then it's going to cost more, but they're starting, because again, that's time. If you're sending a demo crew in with some sledgehammers just to take everything and put it into a dumpster, that's cheap. Sending in educated people to pick and pull those materials out to reclaim, recycle, or palletize and send back for reuse or whatever, reprocessing.
That could be free and sending it to landfills at cost. So sometimes it's even better depending on the.
Yes, it can be. And then you also need the network of people to come and get it. And that has been tough because there have been some really good companies that have come and gone, like really good ideas that people had to, like, we'll pull it and we'll, put it there. We'll be the kind of go between for that. But they weren't getting enough work. And so the conversation in the industry right now really is, can the companies that have a reclamation program incentivize that by maybe you buy 100,000 square feet of carpet tile and you pay 2% of that, or some amount of money that's almost like a bottle deposit, and then the demo crew, that contractor, they get that 2% when they redeliver that carpet back. So that kind of model has been really interesting that people are talking about. No one is doing it yet so far, but it's that I know of anyway. So that's an option. There is another thing to kind of mention. There is some precedent in historic preservation projects that we can potentially learn from, because you do need to do a walk. Of course, if you're historically preserving a building, there's a lot of initial work that's done on that building to make sure that any historic detailing is avoided. And so there's a lot of people looking at historic preservation as a model to that, of there's a walk done beforehand. And this is really good for those projects that maybe we don't know what's in there. But I would almost think, if you are an operations person too, is really making sure that you're keeping track of where your stuff is when. I worked for a very large coffee company based out of Seattle that everyone in this room has absolutely heard of, unless you have been living under a rock. And they had a really good program in their actual workplace, not in the stores, but really in the workplace, for knowing where things were when in the building, which executive has what chair in what office and how old is it. And we're able to kind of, almost like you might rotate your tires, kind of be able to take things in and out. But it was for each building, that was one person's whole job. Exactly. Very deep tracking inventory. It was it was insanely deep. And then storage cages and things like that. It was pretty fascinating. And I think that there could be something with that. So I think we'll see a lot of options, and I think there's nothing but ideas open. But I would definitely look toward Carbon Leadership Forum for ideas about that, because this is being especially studied through the people that are deep in carbon reduction work right now, and embodied carbon reduction work, because reclaiming anything represents such a lowering of the embodied carbon that it can make the numbers on your kind of embodied carbon modeling come down. The reduction is so much. Do you have any opinions on this? Okay. Okay. I was long. Yeah.
So, Xiomara and then Melissa, can you also share a case study where collaboration between architects, designer, and door hardware manufacturer resulted in a product that meets aesthetic, functionality, inclusivity, and sustainability, of course?
I think we have a lot of products, so that but tonight I will speak about Toko, also because we just won the honorary award from New York City by Design.
Yeah.
So we are very proud of this. But also because Toko is the first hardware collection that addresses sensory sensitivity, while also prioritizing sustainability and versatility. So let's try to explain this. Today, one in five persons, sorry, is considered neurodivergent, which means that their brains work a little bit different from the norm. These neuro minorities, that are the 20% of the population, are often have often a higher sensitivity to their environment. So, what means that they can easily feel overwhelmed, irritated, or yes, don't feel comfortable in the environment. Um, Additionally to this, post-pandemic, we are all more tuned into our surroundings. So we are more aware about what we touch or how far or close we are from others. So in this context, if you are an architect or an interior designer, today your challenge is to design spaces that suit everyone. Doesn't matter if they are super sensitive or not. I think Melissa at the beginning said that we have to give the designers options. So, and here's where Toko came. So, because Toko, it's hardware. So we work in the two senses that hardware can work. From one side, we have the visual one. And here we are offering infinity possibilities of colors. It's like entering a candy shop. You can choose any color to set the mood and help the user with the navigation. Tactically, yes. We try to create an experience, no? So Melissa, no, Camden before talk about Econil, but you have another pronunciation like Egonil. It's like Italian Econil. And it's a very interesting material for the sustainability point of view, but also it's very interesting because it has a warm touch. So we choose also for this reason because like a tennis racket can make or break your game, for a hardware the grip is crucial, can make can give you a hold, a secure hold, no, of the hardware. So we work in this grip, choosing Econil because it has a warm touch and is sustainable, creating two different experiences. One is smooth and the other is texturized. And what else we did? And yes, and at the beginning I say about the versatility of the products. And we also talk about this because Toko is interchangeable. The levers are easy to change. So if over the time the needs and the preferences of the user change, you can change just the grip, not all the lever. And even more, we decide to go for the most common fixing measurements in the US market for hardware. So we are making of Tokos a very good option for renewal projects. So we try to do everything that we can. So when you open a door, when Toko is there, you are opening a door, but you are also supporting our effort to improve people's life and to also protect the planet, no, in some way. So for this reason, it's amazing, this collection, I think. So.
Thanks. And now, Melissa, you can finally share the slides. And yeah, it was about a project where you successfully balanced innovation, equity, sustainability, and human-centered design. And if you had like key decision on approaches that you want to share with us, and then we can wrap up with a final question.
Yeah. Careful. Yeah, just one more after before this. Yeah. So this is the entry to the surgery suite I had talked about before. And just to show you that, we've talked about sustainability and innovation and modular construction and things like that. But the key to this project is that we harnessed all of that to make sort of a welcoming, hospitable experience for people who are coming in who are really scared, who are about to have surgery. So and not only for the people who are coming in as patients, but for the staff too. So these are hand washing sinks that really make washing your hand, and they're throughout the suite, like the experience of just like for a staff member to wash their hands, an enjoyable experience. It's like a moment where they can pause and actually, have a beautiful space to wash their hands in. And even as you're walking into the suite, the rounded corners within this modular system just, I think, create a welcoming kind of feel for people to come into the space. I think that sort of it's also calming in terms of the color palette. The flooring is sustainable. And even the artwork program in this building was specifically by diverse artists, so that we're also speaking to our diverse patient population through the artwork that they see throughout the space. So if you go to the next one. So yeah, so these are what was great about this modular system is that you can kind of just, it's a kit of parts and every room is identical. So you're really just kind of repeating the same shape. You're not worrying about like a whole strange set of different columns and things like that. This was built within an existing building, so using a modular kit of parts was also less disruptive because there's an inpatient floor right next to this space. So you wanted the minimal amount of disruption, noise, construction, all of that, because there was a working hospital that this was sort of being built within. Go to the next slide. And even moments like a nourishment station for refreshments, we just try to make it sort of a pleasant, welcoming experience. And then this was also the first operating room that was built in this country with fully modular construction. This is a German system, and it's really incredible for not only the people working the space, but the people cleaning the space. These are all glass walls. So just from an infection control standpoint, like it just makes everyone's life easier, even navigating the space and for staff and the way the equipment is working within the space. And, as I said before, if the way they're treating cancer changes within, a certain amount of time, this all can be snapped apart and reconfigured.
All glass. Wow. That's fantastic. Yeah.
So random questions. The refreshment stations, are they open to the public or are these
Yeah,
these
I
staff
mean,
areas?
no, this is in the open space, so people can go.
In the previous slides, I loved how thoughtful you guys were with every little minor detail that goes unnoticed, but it's really intentional. Like I love all the soft corners because that is such a calming feature, And then the beautiful palette that you guys chose.
And the artwork's actually all original art. It's not reproductions or prints or anything. So people really have like a sense of like the human hand, and it just feels like it adds to the sort of thoughtful experience of all these little moments in the space.
I do a lot in healthcare. I'm obsessed with y'all. Look what you guys are doing. It's fantastic.
So let's wrap up our panel looking about future. So and advice for the future. So Raphael, what advice would you give to designers and producers seeking to integrate inclusive design principles into their processes and products? And how can they collaborate effectively to achieve these goals?
I think the most important thing is have a clearly define what your end result's going to be, so that you can move forward in a direction that you can start planning for all the negative things to not be part of the solution. Like the perfect example is when you think about I read somewhere that once you put pen to paper, an architect or designer puts pen to paper, like 80% of the carbon is already built into it, and so you got to think ahead of time what that looks like in planning before you start. And I know it sounds like it's a difficult task, but and I'm not an architect or designer, so I don't know. But I'm imagining that it's got to be something really really important. But also thinking about early integration of your principles. Ken, you said early on that making sure that you have things in briefs that in your briefs on the front end so that they don't get included, like things like for heights, weight, or materials, all of these things that matter that will impact things from a sustainability standpoint and an inclusive design standpoint need to be thought of and put into the briefs ahead of time so that you can create the product and the project that you're looking to produce. And I always say I love people that challenge me, and so I want to partner with forward-thinking people like MSK and the work that they're doing, or with Candon and the work that she's doing. You guys with the work that you guys are doing, it's important because it gives us the ability to stretch our brains and think more dynamically about the things that we're doing. So as new and younger designers. I'd say think about that, but also think about things holistically because if we get bogged down in that devil in that detail, one little detail, but make sure that we're thinking about the whole person and not just a piece of the person. I think it's important. And from a collaboration standpoint, um, stay in constant contact with whomever you're collaborating with. Make sure that you guys are having constant conversations and iterating as needed. I think that's really important. But the final thing I want to say is make sure you stay curious, always wanting to learn, so that you just don't stay stuck on stupid.
And finally, you, Xiomara, what opportunities do you see for our industry to innovate and address these challenges effectively? And can you talk about the research that was commissioned to the University of Venice?
Yes, sure. It's a lot, but I will be short. Yes, of course, I will be very short. So, I think there is still a lot of our industry can do it. There is always more. Also, for this reason PBA create or collaborate with Aquafil and with the University of Venice in this research about how people perceive inclusivity and sustainability. And it's very interesting. Of course, the research is focused in our Toko collection and with the easy comprehensible measurements like hard or soft or um, I don't know, another easy, a cold or warm, for example, to understand how an audience that it was from professionals want, but also for naive people, react to these inputs. To understand a little bit better how these two values are perceived. So it's really interesting. We have very amazing results, but this result will be unveiled next month during the NeoCon, so I'm not able to tell you anything. But we are really excited. We are looking forward to it because we think it will be the beginning of a new challenge for our company, but also for our industry. So that's it. So.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the audience or? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I have a question because you all talked about creating something that's right for the client and for the context you're working with. And do you have examples where you had to collaborate, for example, in this project? Sorry, you talked about how to make sure the people that you care can also move properly in the space. And do you have an example of the way you collaborated with these people and the dialogue you made with them, and how did you use their knowledge of the space to design something that was suitable?
Yeah, so we hadn't built, I guess, a surgery space maybe in like 5 years. So we talked about whatever they were experiencing in their current spaces. So extensive end user kind of input, multiple meetings as we're designing the space. They're constantly telling us about like how can it be more operationally efficient, like what is it that how are they going to be able to observe the patients better? How, what is it if they're moving between one station and the other that's going to improve the way they're able to care for the patient? So like that, those conversations were happening the whole time we were designing.
Kind of like from that, when you hear that feedback, is it relatively easier to kind of build out these spaces to kind of more accommodate for those needs than it is to be sorry, than it would be if it was like more of a built-in space?
So we were actually using 3D modeling and fly-throughs for this experience, and so they were able to actually do a VR walkthrough and sort of give us feedback as we were designing it. So definitely, this digital component construction like is very good for people talking about like how they're going to use the space and really sort of iterating that like over time.
And we have
I was just curious to hear more about the trauma-informed design process and history, and whether or not anybody else, I don't know, as Eleanor, that you, this is something that you use either overtly or, maybe part of the process is maybe not there, but is you would recognize it.
Me or Melissa?
Both of you. I wanted to hear what sort of this process was, and I was curious if Melissa uses it either indirectly or directly as something that's sort of part of it. It's to use.
Yeah. So, God, I'm loud. From a trauma-informed design standpoint, we started this conversation. My colleague, Dr. Lauren Gant, actually did the research, and she thought it was important for us to look at space from the lens of, well, trauma. And I hope I'm answering your question, but
I'm sure you will.
in thinking about why trauma matters is more about, it matters because each individual has something that they bring into the workplace, and oftentimes we get into the space and we don't feel that full exhale, and if you will, and I say that because with trauma informed design, it helps to support the relaxation, the sense of calm, the safety and security that we all want to feel in the workplace. And identifying those moments of tweaking something, whether big or small, and how that might change in adjusting the way that someone exits, maneuvers throughout the day, or they exit the space. I hope that makes sense. And I'm being very high level because there's so much more, and it could be a bigger conversation. And I'm happy to follow up with you with some information if you'd like. Yeah.
So I think for as long as I've been working at the hospital, everyone talks about patient experience, but I think what's new in terms of thinking, I mean, we don't use the word trauma informed design, but I think for staff, it's more of a newer conversation. So, staff who are working in these spaces may have, a moment where something upsetting happens, and where does that staff member go to process that experience. So it's really important for us to think about it in that way, and that's definitely newer thinking and giving them a space for sort of collecting themselves, or an opportunity.
I kind of want the microphone. So I can imagine you don't use the word trauma in a hospital setting. It has a specific meaning. So that's interesting to hear. At this point, I'd like to say, Mr. Williams, I think you're the best panelist. So I work in metrics and measurements, shouldn't even say quantify because I don't want you to think automatically about numbers. How do you know that what you're doing matters? How do you measure it?
So does everybody?
I know that we know that there's just less incidents where a staff member is tired, a staff member, like just the efficiency in which they work, less incidents where they're going to overlook something with a patient, less incidents of a patient falling, less, just all sorts of things that with the care that you can definitely measure.
I think from the workplace standpoint, we talk a lot about belonging, and when we think about people post-pandemic, them wanting to come into the space is one of the things that tell us that it's working. And so I think I'll just use my office for example. There's probably one day a week. There was one day a week where everybody would be in the office, and then we did a refresh and created spaces that felt a blending of home and office, but were smartly designed with inclusivity in mind and creating a stronger sense of belonging, but also giving you the ability to have choice and control over how and where and you want it to work. And so giving primary areas, adjacencies that really support the ability to disconnect from the hive, if you will, or feel a sense of safety, or just a different level of comfort that you would in your normal office. People are coming back into the office to experience that. And I think that's when the magic happens, and that's when you see the success. And so seeing more people in space for us was a great indicator of how much the inclusive design conversation has been for us, as well as trauma that conversation.
I measure a lot of data. I measure a lot of data in sustainability, but that's neither here nor there when it comes to personal wins. And like what doesn't show is when you have a super tough project type or a really pain in the tush client and you make those small wins and just kind of that's like almost in your head of like this celebration of, oh, I finally talked so and so out of LVT 5 years later, even though that would have been, they know like maybe a different project type would have never used LVT to begin with. So the measurement is been interesting because I've been working in interior sustainability for 11 years now, and that is arguably like kind of before interior sustainability was a normal thing, where 11 years ago, if I had somebody that just cared to look at something that wasn't the aesthetic of a product, that was a win. And now I'm, celebrating talking clients into things like mushroom leather, So it's been like this. Yeah.
So I will answer in my role like IAD representative. So I can see that it's working because when I talk with architects and interior designers, I feel that we are talking about the same things. We are sharing values. So I can see that they are happy that hardware can also take care of these things. So I'm pretty happy because it's working. It's really working.
Thank you. Are there other questions? No. So we can all go to the table and enjoy a glass of wine, or thank you to all our panelists. Thank you.